You know, the one thing we hate doing, us race callers, is phantom calls.
I can understand why.
Because you feel like a dill. Anyway, they race down past the 600 metres mark. Pride of Jenny's 2 or 3 lengths in front. Viva Sistina's running well. Fangirl comes to the outside without a fight making ground. And here comes Romantic Warrior around the field. His head's turning the Cox Plate. Pride of Jenny leads by 3 lengths. Romantic Warrior's coming out of the ruck and starting to run on well. And here's Mr. Brightside with Riff Rocket. Mr. Brightside and Riff Rocket are charging after Pride of Jenny and Romantic Warrior. Pride of Jenny fought on. Romantic Warrior lunges. Missed, brother. Pride of Jenny won the Cox Plate for Ladbrokes.
That was absolutely magnificent.
That was
G'day racing and sports fans, and welcome to Quinny's Stablemates. Well, they say that television is entertainment, and there's no bigger entertainer in the racing industry than our guest today, Terry Bailey. Welcome, Terry.
G'day, Nick. Great to be on the podcast, mate. That's a very big opener. I've never ever been called that ever before.
I reckon it's the best way to describe you, the most entertaining race caller on the planet Earth.
Okay, why am I that?
You had some competition, our Swedish trots caller.
Oh, please,
He was
come on.
very entertaining.
He's not with us anymore,
no,
is he?
Unfortunately, he
No,
sadly passed away. So
Right.
you've been, just like when the Queen died, we had the King go in. We need probably a ceremony for you, Terry. You're now officially the most entertaining caller on the planet.
Okay, well, you've lost the plot, but anyway, let's not worry
You're
about
not going to disagree with that. You like to see yourself as a great entertainer, and that's exactly what you are.
Quinny, I was brought up on a country farm, and what we have now to what we had back then is totally different. I used to have this radio and I'd run a wire up this big tree to make sure I could hear 2KY in Sydney. And you'd listen to all the race callers, the great race callers. And what you didn't see the pictures, you made the picture in your head. And you would follow the caller and you'd know their strengths and weaknesses, and they'd entertain because they could get away with it. Now everyone's terrified to entertain because you've got to be a robot and just call the race straight up and down, and that's a philosophy. I hate that philosophy.
So you think the vision, the accessibility of the vision for everyone has made it more challenging as a race caller?
Well, that's one of the reasons why Tappy gave it up. He said, mate, I make a mistake, they replay it time after time. He said, you make one mistake and you get hammered. And this is John Tapp, one of the greatest race callers and one of my idols in racing, one of the best blokes you'd ever meet in your life. So it's a lot tougher gig now. And if you're a little bit extravagant like me, you're going to make more mistakes than what race callers that would just call straight up and down. That's my style. I like to make races exciting. I like to have an opinion.
We've probably got ahead of ourselves, but it's come up in conversation. I also think you're very hard on yourself, Terry, because I've listened back to some great calls that you've made that you have been critical of yourself. A great call, I thought, was one you did in the Golden Slipper. And you say you don't like it because you said something in the run, or here comes the winner, or something very small like that. And I'd watched that replay 50 times. It was an incredible race. And I'd never realised that. Do you think that sometimes that's your voice in your head as well? Like everyone in life is always harder on themselves than other people are?
I called brilliantly that day. I really, kicked the ball really well. And I got to that race and I made that one mistake, and bloody Belle de Jour, couldn't Lenny just fallen out of the saddle and saved me all this pain and that? It was a freakish win. It was a bit like Kingston Town with Bill Collins. A lot of people say one of my great calls was when Northerly was outdone by Freemason. I can't listen to that call. I hate it.
Why?
Hate it.
Why?
It's just not a good call. I don't like the call.
But can you explain why?
I don't like my animation. I went too early. I could have put more in description into the race. I could have controlled the outcome a lot better. A lot of people say that was a great call. I hate that call. I haven't listened to it for years and years.
What's the call that you've done that you look back fondly on? Potentially Brave Warrior winning the Magic Millions in 1994. I reckon that was a great call and one that I know a lot of Queenslanders absolutely loved.
Yeah, well, I'm a New South Wales born. I was born in Grafton on a big country farm, but I spent a lot of time up in Queensland. When I was a youngster, I'd go up there because I just drove around with Fat Albert and a lot of my mates, and we just gamble. That's all we ever did was gamble.
Now, Fat Albert would have been either 46 kilos or 146 kilos.
No, he was just Fat Albert. His name was Darryl, a good friend of mine. He passed away just recently, and a bit of a legend, and he and I would go everywhere, to every race meeting, dogs, trots, didn't matter where it was, completely broke, no money to get home, just hopeless punters. But we loved it. It was so much fun, it was just great.
And we'll go back to those early days. You were a young bloke in Grafton and You even offered a book on Melbourne Cup Day. Is it true that you laid a horse at 1,000 to 1 for the Melbourne Cup and it led entering the home straight?
Bilgola boy, yes. Well, I looked at it this way. The teachers and that, they had no idea what was going on. So I put 1,000 to 1 up and thinking, they're all going to bet. So they're all putting their 50 cents on and their 20 cents and their, their dollar. And in the end, I'd have to pay out about $10 billion, which was never going to be possible. And when it led, I remember one of the boys, it might have been Clark, he said to me, how you feeling now, Bales, eh? And I thought, because the horse was 10 in front or something like that. And I thought, you poor sucker. A, it's going to stop, and B, I can't pay you anyway, so I don't know what you're going on about.
What was going through the head of the teachers to have a bet with a pupil at 1,000 to 1?
I used to have a lot of fun at school. I did some outrageous things. Like one day we had Mick Adele was our teacher for English, and it was a Monday, and I got in, and the lesson went for, I think, 40 minutes. For 35 minutes, he and I sat up the front talking sport and racing for the whole lesson. Everyone else just did whatever they wanted to do.
So you loved it from day dot. It was clear you loved the races. You wanted to go down that path. At what stage did you start to think about getting involved with a call and potentially making a career out of it?
I started my first call, I think I was 13 years old and 10 months, and I started calling, and then when I was 15, I got to call the Grafton Greyhound Carnival. It was huge. Like the Thoroughbred Carnival in Grafton and the Greyhound Carnival, there'd be 80 or 90 bookmakers. You'd be around, all the Rauders and all the goings on and, all the people of, stature within the community. It didn't matter. It was a melting pot of all these personalities. Everyone's trying to find out which horse is going to be the plunge horse or which greyhound's, going to be the plunge greyhound. It was fun. On course, like the bookmakers ring was fun. I'd walk into the track on a Saturday, and it was like going into Disneyland. I loved it, just loved it. I could stay there all the time, I love the race callers. I love Johnny Tapp, but I love Paul Ambrosoli the most. I met Paul when I was when he was at Lismore calling the Cup. And Paul is the best speaker in the world outside of his late wife, Pat, who was just a legend. And I walked up to Paul Ambrosoli. He's at the Lismore Greyhounds. And he's got the suit on and he's smoking, like he's a heavy smoker. And I'll tell you a story about the broadcast box at Randwick to amplify what I'm saying. And I said, Mr. Ambrosoli, I'm Terry Bailey, and I'm young race caller. He said, oh, yeah, that's how PA used to speak, just keep going. Anyway, the race is coming up, and I'm thinking, gee, they're getting close to the race. So he goes up to the broadcast box, and I'm tagging along behind him. And then he puts the headset on, and the dogs are just going to the boxes. They're about to move in. He says, Birdsville, this weekend we've got lorikeets going for $3.99. Don't forget also the beautiful, beautiful birds that we've got there. They're on sale and I'm ready to grab him by the jacket. So, Mr. Ambrosoli, I don't mean to be rude, but they're f***ing moving in for the Lismore Cup. This is the feature race, and you're talking about birds, lorikeets and all this, at Birdsville in Sydney. And next minute, he went bang. Green light through to the control tower. The bunny on its way to the boxes, all set for the Lismore Cup. Never missed a beat, never looked at the book. And I said, I have finally found God. There he is standing in front of me.
And that lit your passion.
Oh, unbelievable. Yeah, listening to Tappy with, Luskin Star went to Blazing Saddles in one stride. The Newcastle, all these things, Bill Collins, listening to all these great callers. And back in those days, we had so many good callers, great callers. You had the blokes doing the trots here. Even Peter Donegan, you had beautiful caller, lovely caller. Just so many great race callers. And I would sit at home and I'd practice. I'd be in the farm, I'd be sitting, because we had a big dairy farm, so there'd be the cattle listening, there'd be the greyhounds, the dogs, the chooks. They're all looking at me saying, this bloke's completely off his rocker. He won't stop talking to himself. And, so it was a lot of fun. And then I would practice call with my best mate, Peter Morrissey, and, we'd be betting and smoking. We're only 14 years old and we're all smoking Winfield Reds. That's where that helped the voice out a lot.
Yeah, that's some great advice, TV. I'm surprised the Racing Victoria hasn't employed you to tutor some of the apprentice callers coming through the grades. So you obviously loved it. You had a great passion. But then what was the next step for it becoming work?
What I did, I was young and mad and crazy. Haven't changed too much since then. But I sort of was chasing girls, having a good time and gambling. Love gambling, just love gambling, just the greatest thing in the world to do. And then I met my wife, my ex-wife, and she found some old greyhound tapes that I had. And she said, geez, you're very good. Well, I sounded like one of the chipmunks, because my voice hadn't kicked by then. But at this stage, I was just into my early 20s. I think I was 22. And she said, you should have a go at doing this again. Next thing, I'm doing this course, radio television course in Coffs Harbour. Then all of a sudden, John Corrigan rings me up from Grafton and says, mate, can you come and do the dogs? We need a caller. So back I'm doing the dogs. And then months later, Johnny Carlton, who was a legend in Grafton, he became very ill. His wife, Sue, actually taught me at school, or tried to teach me at school. And then the club rang me up and said, Terry, we're interested in you coming to have a crack at being the race caller. So that was great, and I did that for a short period of time. I was doing radio, I was doing everything. Greyhounds got more coverage than anything else in Grafton in the paper because I'd write big columns every Tuesday. And then after that, I used to drive up to see Wayne Wilson at up in Brisbane. And, you know, he was coaching me and teaching me. And anyway, what happened, he said, listen, Greg Radley's leaving. He's going back to Sydney. We need a caller. I've got Ian Brasasco, huge Labor Party man, big man in Queensland. He was the boss of 4TAB. And he said, you're doing your first TAB meeting. We're all going to be listening in. And he said, if you do well, I think you can get the job. He said, I really believe in you. Well, it was the biggest slaughter since Shane Dye on mannerism. I absolutely slaughtered the program. We had technical problems. I had 3 or 4 voices in my ear that I couldn't get rid of during the call. Yeah, I went home and I was devastated. And Wayne rings me up that night and says, Terry, mate, you need another 5 years in the country. It's just not ready for you're just not ready for the job at the moment. And I'm dogmatic and don't give in. And I thought about it, and the next day I rang him up. I said, Wayne, you're wrong. I said, I had a really bad day. These are the reasons why. I had technicians under my feet. You know, I went to pieces. You know, I really just lost concentration. I said, you're totally wrong. I deserve an opportunity. You know, I'm demanding an opportunity. So he went and saw the big boss, and the big boss said, send him up here. We'll interview him. And he said, Wayne said, listen, I'm going to try and get you a 3-month course where you come up here, and if you can handle the 3 months, then we'll give you the job. So I got up there, and Ian Brasasco, very tough bloke, you know, and he asking questions of me, and I'm calling him sir the whole time through. And he turns to me, he says, listen, kid. He said, I'm not sir, don't call me sir. So what did I say? Yes, sir. You know, so Wayne said to me, listen, what we'll do, we'll give you the 3-month course. He said, that's just to make Ian happy. He said, you'll be right, don't worry. And he backed me all the way through that, you know, it was good.
Now, we always preach to gamble responsibly, but during these early days, did you have any success at the track, or was it all in one hand and out the other?
Well, when I first started out, I was working and I was earning $117 a week and I was turning over $10,000 a week. So you know how that ended, in tears. I used to love bet. Like what I do, on a Saturday, I'd go to the races all day. I'd smoke probably 2 packets of Winfield Red, you know, and then I'd finish that, then I'd jump in the car with my mates and off we go to the Lismore Casino Dogs. Sometimes we drove up to Ipswich, or we might go to Eagle Farm or Albion Park or whatever, you know. Kilometres meant nothing to us. We just jump in the car. Out of nowhere, we might just go to the Warhope Greyhounds that night. And we just did it. We just loved it.
Just had a ball. Any fond punting memories from those early days, or was it in one hand and out the other?
No, my auntie and my uncle-in-law, they ran hotels. They had in a lot of the pubs in Grafton and also at the racecourse, they had all the catering. So they had restaurants, they had everything. And I used to go along and work for them. And one day I went downstairs, I said, because I got paid. I got paid on a Saturday. Stupid thing to do, pay me on a Saturday. So I went downstairs and Dulcified, it was one of the big mile races at Flemington. I can't remember what it was, and he was a big price and I backed him. I had money everywhere and I never returned. Never cleaned the dishes ever again. I was gone. Yeah. So, yeah. And then, I think I met my wife and I went out and she said, what are you doing? I said, I'm just going to go to the TAB today, up to the pub or whatever, and have a few bets. I came home with nearly $10,000. I started with 50, you know, and I threw the money on the bed because I got a lot of mug lair and shit in me. So I threw the money on the bed and she's going, wow, I met Mr. Brilliant. This is the greatest bloke in the world. She dived on the bed, no lying. She dived on the bed, took the money. She said, I'm putting this in the bank. The only bank I knew was the River Bank. I've never heard of a bank before. You don't put money in banks. You gamble with money, you know. So she confiscated that, so I had to come up with Plan B, and that was not tell the truth after that.
Don't you pay the wife tax, sort of just give a portion?
No, once you're gambling, you're pretty frugal with how you spend your money. But when it comes to punting, you don't care. You just gamble.
Now you're up in Brisbane, you've got this dream opportunity. It goes well and things continue to snowball for your career from there.
Yeah, you talk about the Brave Warrior call. Like, that was a very emotional. Like, that, what I did in that call, that was all my emotions coming out, you know. And the Queenslanders after that loved me. You know, even my uncle said to me, he said, geez, you're a Queenslander now, you know. And working under Wayne was very tough, you know. He had high expectations, and his professionalism when it came to being a race caller, and he's outside of Andrew Denton, he's the best interviewer I'd ever heard. And he taught me, along with John McCormack, who was the boss of 4TAB, about interviewing. And I've always thought that was one of my strengths, to be interviewing, because I was taught by people that were old school, that learnt how to interview. A lot of people nowadays are never taught how to interview. They have set questions. They don't listen to what the person's saying. They don't feed off the story and create another story out of nowhere. And I was lucky to do that, you know. And Wayne was, I'd say, the most professional broadcaster I've ever seen.
So things go well from there, and then the big lights of Sydney come calling. How did that come about?
I was driving to Grafton with my Auntie Dot. Everyone's got an Auntie Dot. And we're driving back to Grafton because I was invited back to call the Ramornie Handicap, I think it was. And a phone call, Graham McNeese rings me out of the blue and says, Terry, would you like to come to Sydney for the job? The next day, they're organising the function where they're interviewing, or they're showing, you know, here's Greg Miles, here's Alan Thomas, this is the new team. Here's the new talent coming out. They didn't have a race caller because everyone knocked it back.
Why?
Some were happy where they were. Others went, why do I want to go there? The cost of living, and I'm on a hiding to nothing, you know. So they rang me and said, we offer you the job. And they tried to give me less money. And I knocked the job back, I think, 3 times in the car. And then they finally gave in and said, right, you can have the top money, and we'll book a flight and you're into Sydney the next day to be interviewed as the number one caller. And I rang Wayne, and Wayne said, mate, you're not ready for that. You're well off, you know, you're only just starting your career. So that probably led to some of the downfalls and pitfalls that I had later in Sydney, because I really wasn't ready. You know, I was still another 3 or 4 years.
How old were you at the time, roughly?
27 maybe,
That's
28.
a big responsibility for a young man.
No, let me think. Yeah, I might have been 28 or 29. I can't remember now, Nick. And it was a big responsibility. And I went and had a call at Canterbury with Tappy, and then when Tappy had his last day, I called the race, one of the races, while he was downstairs. And being young, you get big-headed and think you're invincible and think you're better than what you are, and then all of a sudden, you know, you get brought back to earth. So yeah, that was a real learning curve for me. That was, yeah.
Well, while you were there, you called some absolute superstars, and I loved listening to some of your calls on Sunline. And even you can't be self-deprecating about them. They were absolutely outstanding races, and some of your calls were magnificent. What do you remember about Sunline and the thrill of calling her?
I love her. I saw her in the mounting yard. I think it might have been the T-Rose or the Furious, one of those 3-year-old series races. And I saw her in the yard, and I went, look at this thing, would you? You know, this is a monster. Like, she had the biggest backside on her. She just had, when you looked at her, you went, this horse has got something X factor. And she was a front runner as well. So I called all of her runs in Sydney, you know, and the only one I regret was and I'm sure Ian Craig feels the same way, because we both looked at each other after Shogun Lodge lunged and Bossy put the whip in the air, and we were both about to say, but Sunline's done it. And as soon as Bossy went up, we both shit our pants and said, photo.
But you stuck to your guns more. You were more leaning towards Sunline, though.
Yeah, well, anyway, it wrecked the call. You know, it wrecked the call.
Bloody Bossy.
We still blame Bossy for that bloody mug lair.
What made calling her so special?
She was just a great horse. It was like I call Might and Power. You know, I'd seen Might and Power win the Hollandale Cup when I was with Wayne, sitting in the broadcast box while he called, and he was a superstar. Like, he would have matched any horse in any era at the top of his game. I had Lonhro. Tie the Knot was a great horse. You know, I loved calling Tie the Knot. I love calling the derbies. Like, the Golden Slipper was the hardest race because they jump. It's helter-skelter. It's all over the place. But I love calling the derbies, you know, the classic races and stuff like that. Some great horses. Sky Heights Victory, you know, just one of many.
You mentioned towards the end of your time at Sky, it became a bit challenging. Talk to us about some of the issues you had.
I was getting a lot of photo finishes wrong, and I needed to kick up the arse, and they got impatient with me, and I became very stubborn and pig-headed, which was my fault. And then I think punters lost confidence in me, and it came. Matt Hill was coming through. He was part of the scholarship team, and they thought, we've combined radio and television. So Ian Craig got the job in front of me, which was to be accepted. I took a bloody big pay cut. Luckily, Kenny Callender and good friends got me the on-course calling job, doing all the city races. And I had a lot of clubs, like I had Newcastle, Scone, Hawkesbury, 3 clubs that went out and said, "You're our on-course caller," which was amazing. Beautiful, beautiful thing. So I survived for a while, and I ended up, I got made redundant, of course. I was one of about 5 or 6, I think. And then out of the blue, Peter Sweeney said, "I'd like to meet you to, interview for a job for TVN."
So you come down to beautiful sunny Melbourne. Your tan's never been
Wasn't
so
sunny. It was
bad
bloody
since.
freezing cold. It was freezing cold. And I think I stayed in the broom closet because they had no space left at Warrnambool on the first night, on the Monday. So I stayed in this tiny little room, but got upgraded after that. And yeah, it was an experience. Warrnambool, and I knew nothing about jumps racing, and I was just in awe of the jumps racing, and how the people stood and clapped, even with about 400 metres to go. And I'm thinking, the race is still on. What are you doing,
It's sensational, is it, where the horses just get applauded for finishing the Grand Annual?
Yeah, it was remarkable. And I hadn't seen many jumps races, so I found that, unbelievable.
Before we pivot to you being in Melbourne, your end of your time in Sydney, how hard was it on you as a person?
Crushed me. You think you're worthless. I still get emotional about it. People don't understand, I had nowhere to go. I was going to go back to Queensland, have to sell cars or something. I didn't know what to do. It just crushed me, And it took me years to get over that, to think that I could call races, because you doubt yourself. You go, well, maybe I'm just no good, And that was really tough, Nick. That really knocked me around. It still hurts me today.
How long did it take to get your confidence back?
It's a slow process. When I first came to Melbourne, I had something to prove, so I called my guts out, and I think I did a bloody good job, because I had a lot of new horses, knew everything, and I pushed myself. And then sometimes you lose focus of what you're doing, how you should be enjoying the game. When Greg retired, or Brian retired, I should say, I was doing the Metropolitan meetings. I did, Weekend Hustler. I had some really good calls. I called a great call in the Blue Diamond of Rian, I think it was, for Dwayne Dunn. I was proud of that, doing that autumn. And then they obviously replaced me with Greg, which was rightful. And then after that, that's, you sort of push back down the ladder again. And then I think after a while, you just say, what the shit, I'm just going to enjoy myself. I've learnt now to enjoy my work and not concentrate too hard on the bits and pieces of it. Just go out and be happy. It's like when I do the Tuesday show. I'm just going to be me, just be happy. Some people that work with me go, it's too crazy, I can't handle it, And then like Hutch, well, he loves it, So, and I've always thought, I've taken racing too seriously. It's a bloody hard, tough sport. It's every day, it's all the time. And sometimes you don't give time for yourself. You're that engrossed in it, you just can't pull away from it. Now I've been able to sort of pull away from it and enjoy what I'm doing, enjoy the calling, And I'm not punting as much anymore. I don't punt too much anymore.
So when you were punting properly, how hard was it to call a race where you've had a really big bet?
In a Group 1 race, like I've had some really big bets, you wouldn't even know you had the bet. You just forgot. Like they'd hit the line in a Group 1 race, and I go, oh, that's right, I've had 3,000 on that winner, And then maidens at wherever you're going down the side of the track, and you got one eye looking at the horse you're back to, going, you're thinking to yourself, you dirty flea, fancy me falling into you again. And then you never overplay. And people say, people have funny ideas. They say and think things which are so wrong. It's just complete bullshit. Like they used to say to me, oh, Alan Thomas, he's a terrible caller when it comes to the horse that he's backed. AT wasn't betting. AT didn't bet late in his career. People say to me, oh, you backed this horse and, you can hear it in the call. I never backed it at all. The horses I backed, if I had a good go, I downplay.
If you were giving advice to a young caller, would you say bet or don't bet on races you're calling?
That's an individual thing. Like my passion for the sport was listening to that radio back in the the 70s, and gambling. You know, it's a different era now. Like, you've got to have the passion for the sport. You've got to start early. And I started in an era where you knew the lingo, you just knew all the people. You know, it's a different era now. It's a television sport. It's a bit like rugby league. It's a great television sport. It's easy to sit at home on your lounge and bet. You've got all the appliances in front of you. You know, you pick up your Ladbrokes account, bang, bang. You've got so many options. You don't have to go to the races, and you don't have to get involved in the races themselves at the track, being around the horses. Like, that's what I love. I love seeing the horses at the track. I love seeing the jockeys getting up. I love seeing the trainers. Like, when I was a kid and you go and see all the great trainers, you'd stand there in awe. And you'd see like Mick Dittman when Rory's Jester won the Golden Slipper. You'd see him and Jimmy Cassidy and watching them go stride for stride. You go, how good's this? These great athletes, you know, and these great trainers and these wonderful horses. But we've lost that now. It's sort of gone away from the track to being more, you know, a product that's a television product.
Now, speaking of television, you really did launch yourself as an entertaining broadcaster when TVN gave you those opportunities at the Valley on a Friday night. Some of my favourite memories from watching racing were those Friday nights, and I couldn't even tell you a horse race that took part, but it was you, Dr. Turf and Jason Richardson, a magnificent trifecta.
Yeah, we got on so well, and mates and friends, and like Turfy and I have been great mates for many years. I remember when I first met him, I was doing the Jungle Juice Cup, and this is at Cessnock, and he was doing some Toyota thing where he'd travel all around Australia promoting Toyota. And they brought him up to the broadcast box. You know what Turf's like. He can be a rude son of a bitch sometimes. He walks upstairs, he sticks his big nose in the broadcast box, looks at me and says, "Who are you? Goodbye, f*** off." And then off he goes. And then I met him years later, and I said, "Let's have some fun doing this." And he said, "Yeah, absolutely." And when you work with someone like Clint Hutchison or Dr. Turf or Richo, you can do whatever you want to do. You don't have any, you know, there's nothing to constrict you from what you're doing. Like, some of the great ones the greatest one of all was when he's talking about Who Begot You. And he says, "Bales, Who Begot You, he's got out on Betfair." And Turf is a conspiracist, right? He thinks there's a conspiracy happening every day of the week and he should be involved in it somehow. I don't know why, but he thinks like that. And, you know, he said, there's something wrong with this horse. I said, "Is there?" I said, "Well, you know, why don't you ask?" And one of the boys says, "Mark Kavanagh's walking across the mounting yard heading your way." And I'm going, "Well, why don't you man up for the first time in your life and go and ask the trainer instead of making stories up and rumours and innuendo?" And I turned around and I said, "Mark, come over here, old son." And Cav's he's in daydream world. He goes, "Well, what?" And over he comes. And Turf says to him, I said, "Turf's got something to say to you. It's the first time in a long time he's ever manned up, and he wants to ask you a question." He says, "Well, Mark, is there a problem with Who Begot You?" Oh, if Cab could have got out the biggest gun in the world and shot Turfy, he would have. And there was animosity straight away, you know. And then Turf kept on pushing. I said, "Well, is there a problem, Turf?" As Mark explained, he said the horse is fine. And Turf, dogmatic, said, "Well, he's out in the betting." And Mark says, "I don't care about the betting, mate. I don't watch the betting. You know, what are you talking about? You don't even know what you're talking about." But Turf, being Turf, he wouldn't give up. You know, and a week later the horse was scratched out of the Cox Plate with a problem.
So a win for Turfy.
Oh, he was justified. He was justified, but it was so funny, you know. Like, we used to get pizzas brought in from, I think it was Chris Pizza, in Racecourse Road. And he'd go, how am I going? I said, "You're all right, Turf. We're all right." And I'd say, "Welcome back, folks. Great to have you on the program. That last race, Turf, what do you think about the favourite's performance?" And here he is with two pieces in his mouth.
It was just so entertaining, and it was almost like the lower the calibre of racing that night, the better, because then you guys got more opportunity to showcase and have some fun.
It was, you know, like it's just about like with everything I do. You either love it or you hate it. There's no in-between. There's just not going to be an in-between. But all the trainers love coming on the show. It's the same with the Tuesday program. They love coming on the show. They love being part of it because, as I say to them when they sit down, we're sitting at a bar having a few drinks. We're just mates. We're not prim and proper. We're not putting on these special questions that you've got to ask. We're just listening and having a chat. That's all we're doing.
Listening to this has probably changed maybe how a few people view you, because you've spoken about self-deprecation and getting down on yourself, where listening to your calls, they always seem so joyous and you're having so much fun and you're putting your personality out there. So Have you changed along the way, or is this the real Terry Bailey we see these days? Because often if we're listening to a call, you'll give a horse a bit of a clip, you'll tell a story along the way, and you make it entertaining.
Well, the first thing I do is I tell the truth. I don't bull. I don't say that's a great race meeting or this is great if it's not great. If it's great, it's great. It's either it is or it isn't. I don't go making up themes that don't exist. I've learned to enjoy, like I said, I've learned to enjoy my calling because there was a stage there I went through, a divorce, got a lot of depression, and on social media since 1998 till even till now, I've been smashed. If I sat down and showed you some of the stuff and the comments and that, and I used to read it. You'd call a race and you'd call it well, and then these people would say things.
Like what? Like what would
Mate,
people
give it away? You've lost the plot. Give it away. You've lost the plot. You're a shit caller.
But nothing of substance. There was never a comment you read and you thought, oh, that's actually could be true. It's just idiots being nasty.
If someone says to me, you stuffed that race up or whatever, right, then I can accept that if I've done that. But they make it personal. I don't know how these people operate in their daily life. I don't even know why you do it. Like, I have opinions on people that I see in media. I keep that to myself. I don't go out on social media and blast people. Why do I want to do that? If I don't think this bloke can call a race, that's my opinion. I don't have to savage the bloke. I don't understand that mentality. It does not make any sense to me. And any race caller will tell you they're the hardest person on themselves. Like, if I wanted to be a straight up and down caller, I could do that, but I wouldn't enjoy it, Nick. I could come out and just call straight up and down, no morals, no going early, no nothing. But that's not me. That's not my personality. My personality is to be a bit out there, to do things a bit different. That's my DNA makeup. That's who I am. If you can't be who you are, then what's the point of doing something that you love? You've got to do it the way you feel. And, I'll declare something the winner a long way out. Most of them win, but people only pick on when you're wrong. And it's like people love it when you're wrong. They just can't get enough when you're wrong. I don't understand people's mentality when it comes to that. It just doesn't make any sense.
No, I completely agree with you 100% there. Now, one man that is hard on you is John Rothfield.
Yes.
Dr. Turf.
Yes.
You spoke glowingly about him, your friendship with him, and he's helped me with this podcast, and he's given me some questions that he would like me to ask you during the chat.
This is not going to be good.
All right. True or false? He walked in at the box one day at Cranbourne when you were calling. You were playing online poker.
I had a pair of kings.
Looked up and they jumped, so you went all in.
I had a pair of kings and I went all in.
Called the race and looked back and seen you'd won the hand.
That's exactly right, yes. It just shows men can do two things at once.
That's something you do frequently, play the online poker?
No, they won't let you now because we're so regulated in Australia. You can't do anything. Like, we're the biggest nanny state in the world. I used to love playing poker online, and I'm sitting there between races and I'm going, well, I've got nothing to do. I'll entertain myself. So I'd have the computer playing in a championship, for money with everyone around the world. And they're going to the gate and I'm going, okay, this hand's coming up. I'll just, I won't worry about it. I'll just throw the cards in. And up come the kings. Up come the kings. Well, I'm hitting, bet and then raise and I'm going, racing.
Good start from Turfy.
Yep.
Have you ever nearly got in a fist fight with a trainer at the races?
Yes.
What happened?
I didn't like my call because I said what I said about a horse. I won't go into great detail and, it got pretty hot. So, and unfortunately, he probably would have belt the living shit out of me, but I'm stubborn. I won't give in. I just won't back down.
The way Turfy told it was this trainer went to confront you and you gave it right back to him and then he backed down in shock that you were ready to go.
Yeah, it is true. Yeah, I won't back down. I won't back down, Nick, particularly if someone comes up to me with a complaint and they do it in an appropriate way, I will say, yes, I'm sorry. Like, if I've done the wrong thing, I'm going to say I'm sorry. If I haven't done the wrong thing and you're trying to put shit on me, well, I'm not going to back down. There's no way in the world.
Now, before we finish by getting you to ghost call the 2024 Ladbrokes Cox Plate, which I've given you no warning about, I'd like to talk about another great passion of yours, the Greyhounds.
The mutts.
The flea taxis.
Don't you, eh? I can say it, you can't.
Hang on, I'm an owner. I'm an owner with you.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, beautiful, beautiful pups too.
Oh, you say that to all of them?
No, I do. Oh, I do, yes. I do. Of course I do. Yeah, I used to call the dogs. I trained two dogs that had 4 starts. One went, and then the 5th start, the lure broke down when there were 5 in front with my money on. Do you reckon? I walked off pissed. I was not happy.
When was this? Early 90s? 1990, Light Parade?
Yeah, that's correct, yes. Yeah, who told you that?
Oh, lots of research.
Okay, yeah, so she got the money. We had a good plonk on her. And then I went and started professional race calling. I'd been around greyhounds all my life and thoroughbreds all my life. You know, I love the both. Not so much the harness, but back in those days, I could tell you every greyhound in Australia, every harness horse, every thoroughbred, I listened to everything. Just listen to everything. And I got divorced. I had a big cancer scare where I was, act of God, I was lucky to be saved. And I said, well, I'm just going to do what I want to do here. I love the dogs. And I've got a heap of dogs. I've got more dogs for sale too, Nicholas.
Well, give them a plug, because some people might be listening to this and say, I'd love to get involved with a greyhound. Because a lot of people say, I want to get a share in a dog, or how do I get a share in a dog? And they don't know how to do it.
I've always got shares. Come and see me at the races. I won't rip you off, okay? I usually rip myself off before I rip other people off. And I'm training them now. I've got 8 crocs at home. They're all rejects that have come back to me, and I'm re-educating myself to be a trainer. I've been lucky. I've had a lot of beautiful people in the greyhound industry helping me out. They've gone out of their way to help me. So that's been wonderful. And Mickey Kent's come along as well with his staff, and they come out and help me feed the dogs when I'm getting home late at night and go to all the trials with me. And I'm enjoying it. It's given me something away from gambling and calling. It's refreshed my brain. And, I love, and the dogs, mate, they are the most beautiful animal in the world. This is the world we live in now. People know nothing about anything, but they have an opinion on everything. And they have no education for their opinion. And that's the same with the greyhound industry, And in every sport, there's going to be people that do the wrong thing. They've been pretty well weeded out of greyhound racing here in Victoria that I'm aware of. And you go to the races and you see them with the greyhounds. They love the greyhounds. They love the greyhounds. I saw one at Hillsville the other day when the dog won, and the lady came back and she said, "Oh, lovey, bubby, yeah." And I'm thinking, how good's that? People don't see that side. People don't want to see that side. They've already made their minds up. It's the same with thoroughbred racing. They don't see how much love the horses get and how it's run.
No, you're absolutely spot on. They are the most loved animals, and they're beautiful animals. And we've loved having a chat today. And I'm going to be a bit of a cheeky bugger because I reckon you can handle it. I've just grabbed the Ladbrokes app, and I'm going to bring up the Ladbrokes Cox Plate market this year, and I'm going to ask the superstar Terry Bailey to do a phantom call.
Rightio, Nicholas, we can do this.
You
know one thing.
Yes?
That's me sunglasses, you idiot. I can't see with sunglasses. The one thing we hate doing, us race callers, is phantom calls.
I can understand why.
Because you feel like a dill. You're standing there calling a race which doesn't exist. Anyways, they race down past the 600 metres mark. Pride of Jenny's 2 or 3 lengths in front. Viva Sistina's running well. Fangirl comes to the outside without a fight making ground. And here comes Romantic Warrior around the field. His head's turning the Cox Plate. Pride of Jenny leads by 3 lengths. Romantic Warrior's coming out of the ruck and starting to run on well. And here's Mr. Brightside with Riff Rocket. Mr. Brightside and Riff Rocket are charging after Pride of Jenny and Romantic Warrior. Pride of Jenny fought on. Romantic Warrior lunges. Missed, brother. Pride of Jenny won the Cox Plate for Ladbrokes.
I'm so glad I gave you no warning about that. That was absolutely magnificent.
That was shit.
No, but that was great. Why would you say it was shit? Like, why? In all seriousness,
because it's not real. It's not a real call.
Because it's a phantom race. It might be real in a few months' time.
Yeah. There's a technique to doing phantom races, and Wayne Wilson, my boss, used to do it best, Like like when you do a normal phantom call, it's pretty boring, But people that are not race callers, they think it's great. As a race caller, you stand there and you go, "Geez, I'll be glad when this is over. I can't handle doing this, But he'd say, "They're ready to go, racing in the Melbourne Cup, to the roar of the crowd," and everyone would go, and one would say, "That was let's do that again. I want to hear the roar of the crowd." And he'd go there, "Racing in the Melbourne Cup to the roar of the crowd," and everyone would go, "Hey!" And then you do a phantom call. And I used to do this in Sydney. You know, you go, romantic warriors coming into it strongly on the outside. And the blokes that have got him in the Calcutta go, yes, go. Oh, he's hit a flat spot. Just out of nowhere. You know, just have all the highs and lows of it, you know.
Just get them going. So you don't enjoy doing the Phantom calls?
Hate it.
Oh, I thought that was magnificent. I really did.
Hate it.
I enjoyed watching you do it.
You're very easily pleased, Nick.
That's why I watch Tuesdays with Terry every week. Terry,
mate.
it's been an absolute privilege. Thank you so much for having a chat today.
Thanks, and thanks for having me on the show.
The superstar, Terry Bailey.